Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod to talk about Michigan State's game against Memphis, where they won the relatively easily in the first round, but today they really struggled against Memphis Tigers. They shot poorly from two, hit the threes finally, and also had struggle from the free throw line, which is a little unusual for them. And they lost 71-63. Again, just a reminder that you have more than 1 day left to enter the free gutter cleaning by the Brothers to Just Your Gutters. No charge. Just send me an email at Eric, ERIC, at tffinots.com with your name and gutters, just a word in the subject line. Also, if you appreciate what we do here at Tiff Knots, head on over to our support page to find the necessary links to give a one-time or monthly gift to the show. You can find that at tffinots.com/support. All right, Rod, let's talk about the game briefly. I think, Michigan State finally hit some threes, but we're not quite as good from twos. They had really seemed to struggle at times. Memphis, maybe credit Memphis defense. I'm not sure really, but they definitely had a little more trouble, a lot of trouble on the line. And definitely more problems turning the ball. I mean, they had a turnover edge that we had hoped that they would have over Memphis. Again, a team that turns the ball over a lot, really did not turn the ball over much at all. They only had 9 turnovers in the game. Michigan State with 13. And that's not a huge advantage, but in a day where you expect a little bit more to your advantage that was the difference, because from a field goal standpoint, they weren't a whole lot different. It felt like Memphis hit about 100 threes, but they only hit one more than Michigan State. They just hit a couple more twos just because they had a few more possessions. They hit their free throws a little bit better than Michigan State. Not a huge advantage there for Michigan State. And so in the end, it's a 8-point loss for Michigan State. They were just kind of playing catch up most of that second half. And it's just a different game for Michigan State. I think we saw some things that were good, which is the shots going in a little bit, but some struggles on offense, at least getting into flow. And again, I don't know how much to credit Memphis with that as much as problems with Michigan State.
No, I'd credit them with a decent amount. That was, as we talked about in the preview last night, that's a grown man team.
Yeah.
And it's, the vagaries of the portal are what they are. And this is what I'm getting at. That team returned one scholarship player from last year, so everybody else is new.
Right.
Now, a lot of those guys are veterans. A lot of those guys are seniors. There's a lot of experience playing college basketball, not much experience playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we're deep enough into this portal era now that I feel confident in saying it's the equivalent to throwing darts at a board blindfolded. In this sense, when you're doing it at the level that Memphis is, or even like the level of program like Illinois has been, they're my favorite example. We tried out 2 years ago. They went heavy, thought they had great talent, and frankly, that team never gelled. They were a horrible fit together as a roster. Last year, similar approach, different guys, and it worked,
Right.
So it really is like throwing darts blindfold. That's how I see it. It looks to me like Memphis has lucked into, and it's luck, because Penny Hardaway has kind of shown us who he is as a head coach to this extent. He's got a staff now that I think for the first time since he's been there is actually good. He's got Mike Davis, who has struggled for quite a while as a head coach, but Mike Davis understands how to coach, particularly on defense.
I thought that was him over there.
It's Mike Davis.
Okay.
And he's got Nolan Smith, who spent many years as part of Coach K's staff at Duke and then left for Louisville. That was a disaster. And so he's at Memphis. He hired, most of our listeners probably don't realize this. Memphis fired their staff in September and hired all these guys. So my point is, you can't give the assistant coaches credit for identifying the guys that they've got because they weren't there.
Right.
You can give them credit for helping mold them into a coherent team. That you can do. But this is what I mean. We've entered this era where, it's a shame. It's a shame because I think that we are in much more of a chaotic, luck-dependent circumstance than we ever have been in this sport. You know, usually good teams stayed good if they had the right coach. I don't know. You know, that's the thing. It's complete dissonance because we've seen Memphis for I think 6 years under Penny be one of the worst coached, most disorganized, um, chaotic teams year after year after year, and now all of a sudden they look totally together.
Yeah.
What else is that but luck? Because you can't point to, well, they really got it right in the portal because they had guys that identified the right bullshit. No, that didn't happen. They were fortunate and good to them. I don't mean that. I'm not trying to take away from that team.
Right.
That is a good looking team to me right now. Now we're going to see if they can maintain that. But right now, I've seen them play 2 games. I saw the entirety of the UConn game, and I obviously saw the entirety of this one. That's definitely an NCAA tournament quality team, and
Sure.
I would suggest where they sit right now, they look like something maybe a bit better than that. How good, I don't know, and you're going to have to see how it develops over the course of the year. There's some stuff going on that you wonder about the sustainability, which is something that we talk about a lot. Your track record of who you are, right? So specifically, Tyrese Hunter, who has been incredible in both of these games. He looks like the best guard in America. And look, the kid is a very good player. As I mentioned in our preview, he's a starter. He was a starter at Iowa State as a freshman and was a very effective player. He was a starter at Texas for 2 years and was a very effective player. But right now, he's shooting. I just want to see if I can get this updated. I don't think this is counting today, but he came into this game shooting 54% from three. He is a career 33% shooter. The best season he's had was last year at Texas. He shot 34%. So has he become one of the best shooters in America? Maybe. It does happen. Guys, as they mature, do occasionally get better. But something tells me that this might be, a little unsustainable. And I think between him and their other guard, who was fantastic, again, Haggerty,
yeah.
Those guys, the shot selection is not great all the time, in my opinion. Now, if you're making, fullback dive heaves at the rim, which Haggerty seems to have a real knack for doing. I mentioned that in our preview, that if you could avoid fouling him, he takes some wild shots. Well, MSU did a decent job avoiding fouling him. He only shot 4 free throws, and I think he was averaging 10 per game. But he made them.
Yeah.
He made those wild shots. Okay. Hunter takes some threes that, to me, are a couple steps deeper than you'd ideally want, but he hit them. So if that stuff continues, yes, they can be a very good team. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think they do enough other things well that they're going to be, I'd be shocked if they were not an NCAA tournament team.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is getting back around to what you just said. I've actually been very impressed in both games by their defense. I was really impressed with it against UConn until they just had a brain freeze in the last 4 minutes of regulation and let UConn get back into it from what was a 13-point deficit and take it to OT. But the other 37 minutes of that game, 36 minutes, I thought they were really good. And I thought they were really good against Michigan State. We saw Michigan State going later into the shot clock in this game. Probably more possessions where they went late shot clock than all the rest of the games they've played this year combined.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Give Memphis credit for that. Particularly, I think their perimeter guys. They were really solid. They weren't letting Michigan State get get the angle. They weren't letting them penetrate the way they normally do, and it really bogged things down. And so credit to them for that. I thought that was really good on their part. And then as I've said, they made shots, but there's some things I'm not too hung up on the shot making, because there are some other things that I think we can point to where you really say, well, the game was lost. So we talked about turnovers, right?
Yep.
MSU had 13, Memphis had 9, but that only tells part of the story.
Right.
Points off turnovers, Memphis had 22, Michigan State 10.
Yeah.
There's your ball game.
Right. Exactly.
I could just stop there.
Yeah.
I could just stop there. It's funny. Memphis and here Memphis is only credited with 4 steals, but it felt worse than that to me. Michigan State, by the way, only had 1, and I think that and the transition game. Memphis scored 11 fast break points. Michigan State did a pretty good job containing them, but I'm gonna wager that the majority of those 11 points on the break came off MSU turnovers.
I would think you're right.
We thought Memphis had a horrible time valuing the ball. MSU ends up with 5 fast break points, and Memphis is in single digits in terms of turnovers. I actually think, and this is, people can take issue with this if they want. That's fine. It's an opinion. I can't prove it, but I actually wonder. Jay Billis talked a lot about how he felt Michigan State was controlling pace by forcing this into a largely half-court game. Well, that's true defensively, what MSU wants to do. They want to get back and they want to make you play in the half court. It's an incomplete statement, because MSU wants to run on offense, and Memphis did a very good job at containing that too. Both teams did. But I actually wonder, we talked about how fast Memphis plays, and I think I mentioned this in the preview, that it was a theory I had that perhaps they're playing a bit too fast. Well, they didn't get a chance to play that fast in this game. And then the turnovers were limited. So, hats off to them for doing it, because their numbers coming in were horrific.
Yeah.
But, it just didn't play to MSU's advantage. Free throws. We've said all year long, and we've seen it, that the free throw line is a big deal for Michigan State.
Yeah.
12 for 19. Now, that's not an out-and-out disaster, but this is a team that's been shooting, 80%? Yeah, 80-some percent. So you're disappointed that they didn't make, 3 more of those. And it was, Jace Richardson missed a couple right after he got his bell run, which was unfortunate that he even had to shoot them. That was whereas Memphis was 11 for 14. So you say, well, you shot 5 more free throws. That's good, but you only made 1 more.
Yeah.
That's an area you hoped MSU would be able to exploit, because Memphis does foul a lot, and they did foul a lot in this game. You'd like more than 19 attempts, but it wasn't terrible from MSU's perspective there. They just didn't make enough of them. So, and then the biggest thing to me, the number one thing I'd hang my hat on, is the 2-point shooting.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are a lot. They've been making those all season, and they were missing a lot of easy ones.
Memphis was, what were they? They were 18 for 32, so well over 50%. Well over 50%. Michigan State, 15 for 32.
Yeah. 46
Again,
or something. Yeah.
Disaster? No. That's why it was an 8-point game and not a 28-point game. But but not what they have done. Colorado, they shoot 70% on Tuesday. And again, some of that I think was Michigan State not converting shots around the rim. That there were several instances of that where they were around the rim and just didn't get it to drop. But I give Memphis defensively credit for some of that. I thought Memphis, like I said, they're a grown man team. That's how they played. They were physical, and I don't mean physical in the way that we usually think about it, where they got a bunch of bruisers running around knocking people into the third row. But their guards are very physical on the perimeter, and they use that strength to help them defensively. You struggle to get by them, and part of that is their strength. And I think their interior guys, they don't have a lot of size, but the two big men they've got, those guys are, they're capable. I was disappointed in the way Michigan State's bigs played in this game against those two guys. Not that Danger and Cisse absolutely killed them, but what was the combined? So Cisse had 9 points and Danger had 7.
I think.
So they had 16 and 10. Those two guys combined. That's not huge production.
Yeah.
But you look at MSU. Jackson had 7 and 8, but he was guilty party on some of those missed shots or other. Zapala 3 rebounds but didn't score, and Cooper couldn't have done much. Yeah, Cooper goose egg 2 rebounds.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much even in total. Well, no, actually, Memphis had a big
advantage
in scoring,
16-7,
in scoring, and about even on the boards. Slight edge for MSU there, but that's disappointing. I had hoped that Michigan State's guys could follow up what I thought was a very good game against a player in Colorado, or Colorado's big, who I think is probably as good, if not a little better, than either of the guys Memphis has.
Yeah.
And they did, because he also really gave UConn problems today.
Yeah.
So that, I think he's legit. But MSU's bigs didn't answer the bell as well. So, that's the problem. I think that the areas that we've talked about as staples so far, running. MSU's defense wasn't terrible. It was good. It wasn't great. It was good. But so that was there, but they didn't get a lot done. They had an edge on the glass, but they didn't do much with it in terms of production.
6 points out of 12 offensive rebounds.
Turnovers were a net negative, which is you would never have expected coming into this game. You got nothing going in transition, and you didn't do the job you normally do at the free throw line. So you add all that up, and you say, well, they shot 35% from 3. Well, see what it gets you.
Yeah, right.
It's the areas that they're improved in are more important to elevating this team than shooting the 3. Now, they need to shoot the 3 better than they have. I'm not arguing that point. But you see today, when they were not able to excel in all the areas that they have thus far, what can happen, even on a day when 3-point shooting is not the problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they shoot 35% from 3 is real good. But let's just talk about, I guess, some individual players.
And there were actually 2 desperation heaves in
there.
They
were probably.
It was actually better than that. They were nearer to they shot basically at a 40% level for this game.
Yeah, and individually, I thought obviously Richardson 26 minutes, so efficient, 5-8 from the field, 3 of the 5 from the 3, 5 for 8 from the line was a little disappointing, but like you said, he just gotten kind of clobbered that going up and shooting a couple, missed both that pair. He had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers, 18 points to lead the team. I don't know. I mean, you're almost at a point now where is he their best offensive player? I mean, I think certainly,
no.
Most consistent.
That doesn't go far enough. Nope. He's their best player. Period.
Best player. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
I've seen enough. He is their best player. And I tweeted this during the game at the end of the first half. Here's why. What you're going to get as a baseline from Jace Richardson every single game. I think has he been in double digits every game? If not, he's
the last
close.
3 or 4 games he certainly has. Yeah.
He's very close. If the ones he wasn't, he was still it was probably 8 or 9 points. What you're going to get from him. He is going to make the right play consistently. He is going to defend at a very good level. I thought he was good defensively in this game. He is capable of running the offense when you need him to. I don't think that should be his primary job, not because I don't think he could do it, but because I think they need him to focus more on being an offensive threat himself. He's their best player. I thought that it would be, I thought Frankie Fiddler would lead this team in scoring. He still might, but right now I've seen enough,
Yeah.
and he's their best freshman at least since Gary Harris, and we might be revising that. We might be going further back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a thought today watching it, and this is not about style of play. So please don't get caught up in that. But just more how mature he looks.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy I went back to is somebody that probably wouldn't occur to a lot of people. I thought back to the only time Michigan State has won Maui, and it came in 1991. And it was Sean Respert's coming out party. Sean Respert
Oh yeah.
had gotten hurt the year before, so he redshirted. So he was a redshirt freshman, which means he had a year under his belt that Jace did not have. But Sean Respert, just from the moment that season started, just looked like he belonged. He was their best offensive player. It was clear. Now they're very different players stylistically. Jace is more versatile, even though he's a tick over 50% from three. I think he's 7 for 13 now on the season.
Yeah.
He's not the shooter Sean was.
No, no.
But I just mean in terms of the way it looks and it feels like you're seeing this guy playing whatever it is, his seventh game, I guess,
Yeah.
in college. And like, if you told me this kid was a COVID year senior, I'd believe it.
Yeah, right. I
And that
totally
was
agree.
kind of how it felt with Sean. Like immediately, and Sean was on a team that had a ton of experience. He had a bunch of guys who had been part of a Big Ten champion, Steginga, Mark Montgomery, and Mike Peplowski, and all those guys. And Sean Respert was their best player almost immediately. This team does not have that same kind of core, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm pretty convinced now, mostly because of the consistency. I feel like I wouldn't say bet the house, but I'd be willing to put some money down that whoever Michigan State faces tomorrow, Jace Richardson's going to play well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and
He hasn't
honestly,
played poorly yet.
you can't say that about anybody else on Michigan State's team. I mean, there are a couple of guys who have had higher highs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably one guy. Jaden Akins has had a couple games where his scoring totals were, 20 plus, and he's had he's had some gaudier numbers, but you are not getting the same consistency out of
Yeah.
Jaden that you have out of Jace. So to me, that alone, Jace Richardson's your number one guy. And that's a surprise. I was bullish on him. I mean, I think people who
Yeah.
listen here knew this. I had seen enough from him in high school and AAU that I figured, even though MSU's backcourt situation looked like, oh, you look at it on paper, there's four guys ahead of him at the three perimeter spots. I knew Jace Richardson was going to play a lot, but I didn't quite expect this. He has
Yeah.
even surprised me a little bit with just how comfortable and how poised and together he is. I don't think it's hyperbole. I mean, he isn't yet getting this kind of mention, but he's got to be one of the best freshmen in America. He has to be. When you take everything into consideration, everything that he's being asked to do and how together he plays. He's not putting up the huge point totals yet that would get you into that conversation, but the way he looks as a player, he's there.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to see a 20-point game from him before long.
Oh, he was at 18 tonight.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh,
yeah,
that's
it
true.
could
Yeah.
happen.
Right.
It could happen
practically
tomorrow.
there. He might get, and you could see him getting 30. Like if he just gets a few more minutes and just
Absolutely.
shoots a little bit more. Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about him is what maybe cuts against him having that kind of game is he also does not look like a guy, as a lot of big scorers are, who really hunts
Yeah.
shots.
Right. Exactly.
He
Within the
gets his
offense,
in the flow of the offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think, I read Graham Couch does quick reactions to the game, 3 points usually. And one of the things he said, which I'm going to take issue with, is he said there was a possession when MSU was down
Six
seven
when
or
they got it
six,
closer. Yeah.
six late. and they had a possession where Memphis played very good defense, kept the guards out of the lane, and took a shot. Cohen Carr got the offensive rebound,
Oh, threw it
tried
into
to
the
kick it
stands.
out,
Yeah.
and it went right between because
Yeah.
Jaden moved in the way he didn't expect him to.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the backbreaker. And Graham's point was MSU doesn't, at least not yet, doesn't have that guy who is capable of going and making a play, just going and getting a bucket in that moment. I'm going to disagree. I think they haven't. I think
I
it's
think he
Jace
doesn't, and I
Richardson.
think he doesn't feel like it's his place to do it yet.
Right. Not
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
But that needs,
I
if there's
agree.
one criticism I would have, it's that. It's that, hey, you're the guy. Go get it.
Yeah.
Now, one more thing before we move on. You're guaranteed, I haven't looked, I'm sure it's going on all over the place. You're going to have a cacophony of clowns. Oh, no, why isn't he starting?
Yeah. Plays
Okay.
more minutes than anyone else.
It doesn't matter. Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
There is a point to be made, and perhaps this is something that eventually Izzo will think about. You can argue that in recent games, and this is at least the last three, definitely Samford and the two games in Maui, it feels like Michigan State offensively has gotten off to somewhat, not horrible. They're not going scoreless for the first 5 minutes or anything, but sluggish starts offensively. The last couple of games, they've had a burst of turnovers that's been uncharacteristic.
Yeah. And usually from Jeremy, the first couple possessions. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can see an argument at some point where you might say, hey, we're going to shake it up because we're trying to find a combination that actually gets us off to the kind of start we want to have. I could see that argument. But beyond that, I don't think we're there yet. I think he's going to try and let these guys work their way through it.
Yeah.
But, and I don't have a problem with it, from a skills perspective together. He's got multiple shooters out there. He's got interiors. Yeah. It's a good balance with that current starting lineup. I'm not worried about that. But short of that, it doesn't really matter. What I care about is that Jace is getting the minutes, and he is, as you said. What was it, 26? So
26, and
let's see. So
Kohler
today
had 28, Akins had 30, and everybody else was in the low 20s. Yeah, or less.
Right.
Yeah,
that's it. So he's getting the kind of playing time. If you told me, yeah, Jace Richardson's going to play 26 minutes, so okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
so I don't have complaints with that. I think, and really the starting bit again, unless they determine that it needs to see a shakeup, just because they feel like they'd like to get a little more together start, and there might be a combination that flows a little better together.
Maybe.
Absent that, because honestly, I look at the perimeter group. Okay, who are you not starting?
Yeah,
you could say Fiddler. You could say Fiddler because he has not gotten off to good starts pretty much any game this year. Mm-hmm. He hit a jumper today early, and then that was it until the second half. Yeah. And that's been a common pattern for him. He's been a second half player. But the problem with that is if you substitute Richardson for Fiddler, well, you're right back to where you were last year with a small. In fact, you're a little smaller than you were last year.
Yeah.
So I don't think you want to do that.
No, and honestly, he's scoring 18 points. I mean, he's playing well off the bench. He's comfortable. Why? And he's a freshman. Why? Why push the right? Why
and you're not going to start him ahead of Akins. That's not happening. And you shouldn't start him ahead of Fears.
No,
because Fears is, and by the way, by and large, I like the way Jeremy's playing.
Yes. Aside from
I really do. Yeah. Like it's weird few minutes in the beginning. And then he settles in and he's doing the things that I expected him to do, quite frankly. And they need that. And I think Jace, for all his strengths, is he capable of running the offense well? Yeah. But he's not quite the same kind of floor leader that Jeremy or even Trey Holloman is at this point. He's functional at that position. I don't think he's a difference maker as a point guard. And it puts him in a tougher spot to be utilized as a scorer, which is where I think you really need him right now. So I don't see a change coming, most likely. But
Yeah.
the only thing that matters is the minutes are there. And then as we're talking about, I think at some point, Jace needs to become the guy who says, I'm gonna look to get mine a little bit more. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
defer.
Hmm.
And it's not like it's a horrible. This is not Tyson Walker in his first year at Michigan State. I don't feel like Jace is passing up shots,
No, not at
but
all.
he could be hunting more than he is. And I think it's probably in the long run to MSU's benefit if he does, because as I see it, that's a pure scorer. He's already shown it. I mean, we know he could shoot the three, but you look at the kind of shots he hit in this game. He
Yeah.
gets to the rim and finishes. He draws contact and gets to the line. He's able to hit mid-range shots effectively. Um, there aren't a lot of holes there in
No,
what he
he's
can
got a
do. So
got a complete game, and he plays
if
defense really great too. I mean,
absolutely, yeah,
right? It's like,
you're not giving the things up that you would normally worry about in playing a freshman. He doesn't make mistakes. He's a solid better than solid defensive player. He rebounds okay for a guy his size. He's competitive in that way. And he's I think pretty clearly he's your most consistent offensive player. There's no doubt about that.
yeah. The only other player I kind of want to just mention briefly is Jackson Kohler. Played 28 minutes, 3 of 7 from the field. He hit his 1 3-point attempt, missed all 3 of his free throws, which is a little unusual. He's been pretty good from
Yeah.
the line till today. 8 boards, 3 of them offensive, 2 assists, 4 turnovers, and finished with 7 points. I felt like we saw a little bit of the old Jackson today, a little bit more indecisive, especially when
Yeah.
he was under the rim, just was a little slow. He had a couple plays later in the game, which were better, where he just like went up quick.
Yeah.
So I'm still overall encouraged by his play, and he obviously played a lot of minutes, and he was fine, adequate defensively for the most part. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he had to break. Yeah, I mean,
but it's not his fault.
right. I mean,
Okay.
so
Because
his bad matchups is what
if you're going to play him, I keep saying this. This is another thing that Graham Couch said, which I vehemently disagree with. Could not disagree more. He was saying, well, the Michigan State small ball lineup with Kohler at the 5 and Carr at the 4.
Yeah, I know he loves offense.
Yeah, no. And you saw it in this game where MSU did an okay job against those guys, against their two bigs. But you know where they got swallowed up? When Jackson was out there.
Yeah, right.
It's not, I don't put it on Jackson. He is not physically capable of defending big 5s. And those are 2 big guys.
Yeah, dangerous.
So you can't do it. I mean, you can do it in a spurt here or there, but you can't do it and think you're going to survive, even against mediocre offensive bigs, if they are truly big.
Yeah.
If they're 6'9", 230, okay.
Right.
But you can't get away with it.
6'11", 7-footers, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's even like
agree.
Danger where he's 6'9", but he's got long arms and he's bulky and he plays bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much for him. He's not capable of doing it. Whereas I think he's doing a decent job of hanging in there defensively at the 4. So this is why I say it over and over. This idea that somehow you're going to minimize Zapala and Cooper's contributions and think that you're going to get away with that, you're out of your goddamn mind. It's not happening. Not with the schedule they play. Now, tomorrow, depending upon the draw, if Michigan State gets North Carolina, they can probably get away with it because North Carolina has very, very little playable size.
Mm-hmm.
They're totally different than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
So that might be a game where you can get away with it. But a lot of the time, and today was one of those, you are going to have a problem. Turning to Jackson's game in total, I do agree with you that he looked out of sync at times, and I think he was bothered by Cisse especially. I think he was just conscious of a guy who's a shot blocker in there, and it caused him. He had won, actually, that last possession of the first half. It ended up in a Jace Richardson 3.
Right.
But it was a bad play because Jackson
Yeah.
had an inside, and he just didn't feel it.
Yeah.
So he was out of sync, but I do want to give him credit. We talked about this. I don't know whether it was the Samford game, I think. I don't think it was Colorado, where they brought a double, and he just without any hesitation went diagonal to Jaden Akins for a 3. It was beautiful. It was the first time I ever remembered him punishing a double like that. Well, he did it again today. Same guy found Jaden Akins for a three. That was really encouraging. Now, we didn't see that consistently, as you said. He was out of sync a lot. But
Yeah.
seeing that kind of moment from him, that gives me hope that, all right, as he continues to settle in and become a more consistent post player, he's going to continue. He already demands. Teams in the Big Ten last year when he started playing were doubling him.
Yeah.
But I think in part it's because they knew, well, he can't make us pay for it.
Yeah, because he's been punishing teams this year. He's been finishing when he's in single
He's been
coverage most of
better.
the
And
time.
so
Yeah.
that's going to force more consistent doubling, most likely, as we go. And if he can consistently, or more consistently at least, read it and make those kind of plays to make an opponent pay for doubling, great. Then that's
Yeah.
another level to his game. I thought Jackson, again, I'm not complaining about Jackson per se with that talk about the defensive end. I think he competes. I think he works hard. It's just there's certain matchups that do not play to his advantage defensively, where
Yeah.
I just do not think he is physically capable of doing the job that you need done at that position. Other than that, he's rebounding consistently well. He's giving them scoring. As you say, the free throws were disappointing tonight because he's been really good. But if I'm going to hang my hat of optimism on one peg, it's going to be that pass he made out of the post to Jaden. That was pretty.
Yeah.
That's exactly the kind of thing you need to see from him.
Well, and I mean, I like the three, and we've seen four-player, fours where they start out, very hesitantly shooting three, a couple, and then you suddenly hitting two or three a game. And so he definitely feels more like that type than Malik Hall. Never felt like a person who ever felt confident enough to take that shot all last year. I mean, although he could hit it,
Yeah.
he just never was a guy who was hunting it. And certainly Kohler does. He's more offensive minded, and he's not afraid to shoot out there. And so,
I would agree with that.
I would not be surprised seeing him finish up 35, 36% from three and hitting, one or two a game. And that's going to really open up things up for everyone else too, and make him a harder
Yeah.
cover. But I think it's going to take some time it's easy to forget. It's just November, and the team will change so much by time, because the year Kenny Goins hits that three against Duke, he was not knocking down threes into November. Maybe at the
Right.
very end of November. I don't think so.
That didn't really start happening until they got
Till
back into Big
It was
Ten
like,
play.
like December, and
Yep.
it was,
No,
and then it's like, oh,
January.
it's like a totally
and,
new player.
and not the beginning of January. He basically, if I remember correctly, he had and it was funny because he had shown it in Moneyball. It's the
Yeah.
one thing that I take from Moneyball on occasions that you can see if a guy is at least finding more confidence
Yeah.
shooting. And he had shown that, but then it didn't. I want to say it was maybe the last 6 weeks of the season. I don't even think it was at the beginning of January. It took a while, but once he got comfortable and confident with it, then it just flowed. And you're right. You could see that kind of change from some of these guys. You could see it potentially from Jackson.
And it is easy to forget how much the team can change and the players can change, because
well,
as much because look, they're terrible from three, right? If they start having 4 or 5 games in a row that were shooting 36% or something, people are going to totally forget about the beginning of the season. I mean, not totally, but you know what I mean? They're not going to worry about 3-point shots, whereas now
nobody was
in, right?
Nobody was talking about last year's team shooting threes in February.
Right. Exactly.
Because they gotten past it. This one will to some extent. Now, might it remain a relative weakness? Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. If I had to bet, I'm going to say no. It might not be a super strength, but I don't think it's going to be something you come into every game saying, boy, we're praying that we shoot 35%. I don't think it's going to be that.
Yeah.
But they need to string, they need to do this again tomorrow. They need to string a few together and then get out of that funk mentally. And I think then you firmly put it behind you, and you go forward.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about briefly Brothers Jesu gutters. It is still leaf season. If you have not cleaned out your gutters, they might be full of stuff. We obviously contest. Just subject line gutters. Send it to me, Eric at tffinots.com. $300 worth of gutter cleaning for free. The drawing costs nothing. Just send me the email. It's really easy. Because they not only clean out the gutters, and they only do gutters, they will fix them, they'll replace them, whatever you need done with as far as your gutters go. The Brothers Adjusted Gutters are absolutely the first call you should make, whether you're on the east side or the west side of the state. Kurt and Greg do fantastic work. They even go out like crazy guys out in the rain and do things, even in the like freezing rain. When they did our house back in February. That's right, February. So not exactly the nicest weather in Michigan, and they're out there doing gutter work. So it doesn't matter what time of the year, they will take care of it. You get 10% off. You mentioned Final Four when you get the an estimate. You can find that at the support page. The Final Four is on the schedule.com/support. You can get the link there as well as to all other sponsors. So they sponsor a player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, and it was Tyrese Hunter. And he obviously was not kept in the gutter. 7 for 15 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, 4 or 5 from the line, had a defensive rebound, 2 assists, a turnover, finished with 23 points. He was a killer. And I don't know what to say, except mission failed there.
Yeah. But honestly, in watching that game, and this was something that I think Jay Billis mentioned on a couple of possessions, but I think it was really true for most of the game. I honestly didn't think Michigan State played him terribly.
No, he wasn't getting like there are a couple wide open ones, but for the most part, he's behind the line quite a ways, and they weren't
He
easy.
he made plays.
Yeah.
He made plays, and a lot of those plays, there's nothing more you can do except just tip your hat and say, "Hey, great
Yep.
shot."
Right.
I think he's really good. He's a key to them defensively. He's really good defensively. And if Memphis is going to really go places this year, I'm telling you, I don't believe their 3-point shooting is going to keep up at this level, mostly because I don't love the quality of shot they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And if over several months, normally you take questionable shots, it's all gonna even out in the wash.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
but
yeah, for sure.
but that's okay if they continue to get this kind of defense, especially on the perimeter. And then with Cisse and even Danger, Danger was a terrible defender at Illinois when you got him out on the floor.
Yeah.
They couldn't use him in anything except drop coverage because it was just awful. But around the basket, he's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
He actually kind of reminds me of Nick Ward that way. You remember Nick Ward struggled in pick and roll coverage, but Nick Ward actually blocked shots. He was a good rim presence. And so they've got a really nice 1-2 punch down there inside if somebody manages to break their guards down, but that doesn't happen a lot.
No.
And Hunter's a big part of that. Look, right now, I don't know if any, this sounds preposterous, but I don't know. There's nobody I've seen that I think is playing better than that kid is. When you take everything into account, the way he's scoring, the way he's shooting, I think if it were me, I might actually put the ball in his hands a little more running the offense because I think Haggerty had 4 assists, but 4 turnovers today. And that's kind of who he is. Yeah. He's a wild man. I mean, he's making wild shots, but I don't trust him. I trust Hunter. But man, it's the totality of it. You're getting all that offense. Oh, and then he goes out and plays defense the way he does. That's a guy you can hang your hat on. And I'm telling you, it'll be interesting to see whoever they get in the championship game, Auburn or North Carolina. Both of those teams have some very, very good guards. But I'm not betting against Hunter at this point in terms of an individual matchup. And so, no, Michigan State did nothing to limit him. I am glad for myself that I identified him and not Haggerty, their leading scorer, who was effective today, but didn't have the impact Hunter did.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to give an idea to listeners, this is a guy who, as a freshman, shot 27% from 3, sophomore year, 33%, junior year, 33%. Now he's shooting 53% from 3. The only thing I could say, it's like 20 for 38 this season so far. And he's 39% from 2. So he's actually shooting worse from 2 than 3.
Right.
But other than that, he's been really good. So anyway,
but
and actually,
even if that doesn't keep up,
Yeah,
even if
he's
that
still gonna
doesn't
be
keep up.
probably 40-ish, right? I
He,
mean, pretty close.
well, even if it slides, even if he ends up in the 30s, even if he ends up in the mid 30s, this is still a guy. He's going to shoot better than 39% from two. I know that.
Yeah, right.
And
Exactly.
and what he gives them defensively and just in terms of his presence, that's a guy that you look at and say, well, and this is what I mean about the crapshoot nature of the portal. Okay, they bring him in and he's been a good player everywhere he's been, but you don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
And the way it looks is that guy looks like he's the face of your program and a 4-year leader. That's what he looks like. Okay, you got lucky. 7 come 11, Penny. Good job with that
Yeah.
role.
Well,
But it's
and
worked.
and the nice thing for Memphis, if you're a Memphis fan, is I doubt they're going to be favored in the next game. They're probably on either North Carolina or Auburn. I'm not sure, but they only have one other game that they're
Well,
expected to. Well, I mean, it doesn't. The point
I'm
is
gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this.
well, I'm just saying by the metrics. But yes, okay.
Yes, yes.
My
I've
point is that the metrics have them only losing one more game all season, and that's at Clemson. And every other game they're
really
favored
okay.
well, then the
Well,
AAC, so they're not a really super
they're
tough
not gonna
league.
run the table in their
No, but they're
league.
just
They'll lose. Yeah,
by the
but you're
metrics,
right. That
they're yeah.
this is a team that to me, and you're right to identify the American, even though I don't think they'll run the table. They're probably going to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
If they play this way, they're going to win a ton.
Yeah.
But this could be a team that I don't know what the rest of their not. Well, you said Clemson's the only game they're expected to lose. Even if they lose tomorrow, that would be their first loss.
Yeah.
Say they lose to Clemson, that's two. You could be looking at a team that very realistically might have 3 or 4 losses in the regular season. I
Yeah. I mean, the
mean,
only other teams people would recognize Virginia, Mississippi State. So they play Virginia at Virginia, but they're terrible.
right.
Home against Mississippi State and Mississippi, they are favored in both those games, and everyone
Yep.
else, like, FAU, North Texas, East Carolina,
Yeah.
Temple. So, I mean, they theoretically should, they're favored to win by double digits or close to double digits most games, except a couple of their away games. So, anyway,
The only problem they've got is they need to root for Michigan State and UConn to really go on from here and have strong seasons.
and UConn's loss didn't help to
Well,
Colorado.
that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They sponsor the player that cleans the glass best for the Michigan State, and they'll clean your glass great and your house, your business, high rise, state capital, whatever it might be. If you've got a window, they can clean it. They'll do a great job. They can clean the inside, the outside. They take care of the screens. They get up on the ladders. Again, they're getting lousy weather oftentimes. They won't be out in the rain because they can't clean effectively. But if it's even cold, freezing weather, they're going to get out there and do the job. So if you need any window cleaning in your life, the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids should be your first call. And the region is very large, so don't hesitate to contact them. Again, you can find their contact information at our support page, finalfoursontheschedule.com/support. You get 15% off. You mentioned Final Four when you get your estimate for the Squeegee Squad. And so you were up 2-1 in the rebounding contest for Michigan State. And I had Kohler. He finished with 8, so I win. And you had Zapala, who you really struggled with fouls partially and just kind of ineffectiveness. He only finished with 3. So that ties it up at 2. And, it's kind of the Kohler train here. Most of the season may just be whoever is a pick is going to win it at this point. Although we said that about Sissoko last year and then it changed. So who knows? But for now, anyway, it looks like it's a Kohler train. And I don't know much more to add about Kohler's rebounding, except it turns out that he can actually rebound.
Yeah.
Despite what other people may seem to think. And then let's talk about the keys of the game brought to you by Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing, where you, if you're a Spartan, should go get your apparel. And that means if you need t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, zip-ups, jackets, they've got all the stuff. They've got stickers for your wall, which I can never remember the fatheads. I can never remember the term, but they got that. They got stuff for cornhole. They've got other schools as well. So anything you need, they are going to be your first stop. And they're also, the nice thing is they are Spartan grads. And so Gabe and Brittany do a fantastic work when it comes to getting your apparel from Michigan State. Screen printed material. It's all great stuff. In fact, this is what I'm wearing right now. If you happen to be watching YouTube, which if you're not subscribed to YouTube, why not? It costs nothing. So go over to YouTube and you can watch my face, I guess, as I talk. But anyway, you can watch. I'm wearing the great stuff from Nudge Printing and it's super comfortable, soft, all the great stuff. Everyone in my family loves the stuff. So first thing was defend the boards for the keys of the game. Memphis, actually, Michigan State did a decent job, and Memphis shot 34.5%, which sounds, average, but they were shooting almost 48%. So it dropped Memphis from the number 2 to number 3 or 4 spot in 3-point shooting in the country. So I guess kind of a win for Michigan State.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Memphis, and I'll say this, and I've been alluding to this earlier. Even some of the shots that they hit were not good shots, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like, okay, is Hunter capable of hitting a 25-footer? Yes. Should he take those shots? I question that. I don't think over the long run, that kind of shot selection, unless you're Steph Curry, kind of works its way out. But they hit them.
Yeah.
That said, I thought Michigan State did a pretty damn good job
Yeah.
of contesting them. And then, and that was, look, if Memphis had shot threes the way that they have in their other games, we would have had a huge problem.
Yeah.
The Michigan State did largely what they need to do. They made a team that's been out of their minds, number 2 in the country, quasi average.
Yeah. Well, the second key of the game was the boards, and Michigan State, say what you want about this game, I guess, but Michigan State was very good from rebound, 12 offensive rebounds. I mean, it's a 40% offensive rebounding rate for Michigan State, which is fantastic. They're
Yeah.
just unable to
Yeah.
capitalize in those.
Yep.
They gave up only 12 or 20% on defensive rebound, offensive rebound rate for Memphis. So they would out 28. It was like 36 to 28 on the rebounding edge. And so I think we can pretty safely say Michigan State is a really good rebounding team this year. I mean, I think we've seen them against poor competition and good competition, and they've been solid.
Yeah, we said coming into this game, defensive rebounding especially has been a problem for Memphis. And it was. And Michigan State did a nice job. As you say, though, they didn't cash in very much at all.
No,
And
6 points.
That's a
12.
problem. That's a problem. You've got to start turning these into points. That's just the bottom line, because it's a waste. If you're getting the extra opportunities to score, you actually need to score
Yes.
to make that matter, right?
If you're old enough, it feels a lot like the very first couple ISO teams where they could rebound, but their shooting was so bad. I mean, it kind of feels like Rutgers, right? Like where they can, dominate the boards, but they just still can't score. It feels a little bit like that.
Well, but what's weird is that other than today, this team's been excellent shooting twos.
Yeah, they have.
So it doesn't really add up that they're not getting more out of it. Some of that has been, frankly, related to the 3-point shooting, that they get an offensive rebound, they kick it out, which is normally a great shot, and they just haven't been falling. Today I felt more at the basket, that they didn't do much. But I'll tell you what, there's no argument that statistically Michigan State won this battle decisively.
Yeah.
But I did feel late in that game where there were opportunities where it was kind of teetering, like around 7, where there were opportunities where Michigan State maybe could find its way back into it if they could get a stop, and they weren't able. I thought Cisse in particular made a couple plays I don't know what he ended up with in this game in offensive rebounds. They credited him with 2. And I want to say both of those came late. One of them definitely did, but I think both of them did. And they were moments where, again, Michigan State was small, and he just kind of physically swallowed up Jackson Kohler in the paint.
Like over the back almost, but not actually fouling.
Yeah, but it wasn't a foul. They were
I'm saying he just was just over him.
And a word about that too, since we're talking about not a foul. Boy, and I say this having reveled in Dan Hurley's meltdowns, but and a lot of the calls that he was because he complains on every call, so a lot of them he's complaining about were actually good calls. But I'm telling you, that was a bad crew today. That was a bad crew. And they blew a lot of calls. I could not believe there was a play fairly late in the game where there was an offensive foul called on Haggerty, I think.
Yeah.
And he get why you don't go? How can you not go to the monitor? The kid is Jay Billis said the kid is lying on the floor. You have every indication possible that you've got a flagrant, at least to look at it and check. And they don't even bother to do that. They miss blatant deflections. They the official, and I'm not, this is not a sexist comment, because do I believe that women are capable of officiating games? Well, yes, I do. That woman is not, however. She was terrible. She's looking right at Haggerty when he takes about 5 steps. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not bothered by if you miss a call, but it's kind of a tough one. These were easy calls that were missed. And it's not the reason why Michigan State lost. It's just a comment on the
State of college basketball
the state of
officiating.
the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't, there's got to be a better way. There has to be. And I think I know what it is, but nobody in college basketball wants to do it, which is to professionalize it.
I think they need to go into the portal for refs. How about that?
Well, they need to professionalize it.
Yeah,
Simple as
right.
that.
Yeah.
They need to actually, because here's the thing. It's not to say that NBA officials don't ever miss a call, but the gap in quality, in my opinion, in officiating between the big time college ranks, where you're supposed to be getting the best in the game at that level, and the NBA, that gulf is massive. It is massive.
Don't you find it amazing that because look at I think great thing is you look at how much Underwood is coming in, as a freshman for Michigan as a quarterback next year. There are reports of $7 to $10 million or whatever it is that someone put up to as NIL money, right? And
Yeah.
making what's that like?
Someone.
Well,
Yeah.
right, but making well, the point is he's making almost like 10 times what a rookie NFL quarterback's making, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's
Well,
not like
but
there's not money, and
there's
it's not like there's money available in college athletics to pay them. It's not like they're destitute, right? It's something that could be done. Is my only point.
well, okay, without getting into the details of the Underwood situation so much.
Please
Yes,
don't.
there's putting that aside. There's clearly enough money in
And
collegiate
interest, right?
sports to
Yeah.
do this in a better way than what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Because frankly, this stuff is disgraceful.
Yeah.
It is, you cannot, especially when you have the benefit of instant replay. And not that they have complete freedom to review every call, but they've got a lot of ability to review calls. And that's what's maddening when you see situations like that deflection on Jackson's pass that wasn't called, where it was obvious, like the flagrant.
Yeah.
Just look at those two. All you got to do is go over. That's it.
Yeah.
And we don't see it. So that's where it becomes truly maddening, because you even have the opportunity to fix the mistake, and it doesn't happen because you don't choose to try and check. Yeah, they got to blow this thing up.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to get into this too much, but there are definitely some ideas of things you could flow games and ways you could fix that. The third key to the game is turnovers. We already talked about this extensively. I don't think there's much more to say. Tigers are normally really bad. They're 259th at turnovers. We're not tonight. And whether that's because Michigan State forced them to play slower or not, either way, they had the edge there on Michigan State, and certainly points off turnovers were a clear, huge advantage for the Tigers. And like you said, that was the difference in the game.
That gave Memphis the running game that they had. And conversely, the fact that Michigan State got nothing done in transition was, I think, because Memphis wasn't turning the ball over the way you would normally expect them to.
Yeah.
So whatever the reason was for it, it was there was the most dissonance between what we expected to see happen and what actually happened of any area in the game.
Fourth key to the game is tempo. I thought Michigan State's tempo was good, but Memphis did a probably better job, at least in the half court, at preventing Michigan State from getting what they wanted. But from a speed and playing fast, it was not like Michigan State was not trying to push it and play the right speed. I thought they did a fine job there. They just weren't able to get much going.
They were consistent in trying to initiate offense early. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do think, while I give Memphis most of the credit because of the defensive job they did, I'll be interested if he spoke to it. We haven't, as we're recording this, we haven't looked at Tom Izzo's post game.
Yeah.
I did feel that Michigan State's act, for whatever reason, I felt like their movement and their activity level was not quite where we've seen it. They were getting the ball into the forecourt relatively quickly, but they weren't seeing the kind of movement we've seen. And again, I'll give Memphis some of the credit for that, but I do think that's something that Michigan State will feel disappointed by. That
Yeah.
the activity level wasn't where it needs to be.
And the fifth and final key to the game was toughness. We saw that, as you mentioned, they're just a very physical team. And that I think really bothered the Michigan State's guards. Although, in some ways, Michigan State matched that and that they rebounded really well. So I don't know. I mean, I think it was a difference, but not a huge. It was not the decisive factor for the game.
Well, look, I don't think it would be accurate to say Michigan State got punked because I didn't think
Which
that.
they did plenty times last year.
Yeah, I didn't think that.
Yeah.
But this is one that I think as a group they can look at and say, you know what, guys, there's another level up we can get to if we want to, because I do think there was a difference. I just think Memphis was, and it's a subtle thing, but in big moments, you find a way either physically to make a play, mentally you're thinking better than the opponent. Toughness means a lot of different things, right?
Sure.
But I do think Memphis was exactly what I expected them to be. Having seen the way they played against UConn, okay, this group somehow, some way, they've got something in that regard. Like that's a grown man team.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put it on the same level as like, in recent years we've seen Houston really have a physicality and a toughness to them that shows up in every game. And you're going to have to deal with that if you're going to beat them. You're going to have to match that. Memphis isn't quite there, but that's a real team. I mean, that's a really tough collective. And I don't think Michigan State had any kind of edge. And I think if I had to give an edge, I would give it to Memphis in this game. It wasn't a massive gulf because you pointed out you don't out rebound that team the way MSU did by not having some toughness. And I thought MSU showed some resiliency. There were points in that game where Memphis could have really blown it open. And it felt like they might. And MSU didn't let that happen. So MSU was competitive. But I just think it's the nice thing about games in November. It doesn't kill your season, but you can use this. And I'm going to guess Tom Izzo will, in one way or another, say there's another level we can get to in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and definitely these tournaments, you can feel like a team just get rolling. And because you only have to, you're playing 3 days in a row, you get kind of in a heater and you can, like, Memphis may not shoot this well in a stretch of 3 games again for the rest of the season. Who knows, right? So Michigan State is going to play the consolation game against either the loser of the North Carolina Auburn game. We love you guys, but there's no way we're going to record this game and wait and to find out who it is because neither of us live in Hawaii. So we live in Eastern time zone. So we're just going to mention, I guess, briefly, let's just talk about the teams who you'd rather see. And then if they see them, who you think is the key for Michigan State to keep in the gutter, since we got to keep that going.
Well, if it's pretty easy, actually. If it's Auburn, it's Brome, their big man. He's dynamite.
Yeah.
And if it's North Carolina, it's their point guard, RJ Davis, who people probably remember from last year. He gave Michigan State a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And he's back and he's still a really good player. But overall, look, we could watch it happen and North Carolina roll out there and win by 25, but I don't think that's going to happen. I expect Michigan State to see North Carolina, and frankly, I hope that they do. Because right now, at this point, we'll see when we get to March. Right now, at this point in the season, it feels to me like Auburn's right there with anybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good team. And this North Carolina, I know they came into this thing ranked 12th, and I did watch the late game last night. They came back from a 21-point deficit against Dayton to win. And, Auburn did the same
That's
thing
twice they
to
did it. Didn't they do it at Kansas? They
Auburn.
ended up losing that game, but yeah.
Yes, yes. But I don't think this is a great North Carolina team. I
Hmm.
think they have a great player. Davis is a great guard, and he'll be a load to stop. And they've got some guys. Seth Trimble seems to be coming along. They've got some guys. It's certainly a talented enough group, but I don't think it's on the level, certainly not on the level of the team they had last year, primarily because they don't have much size. They're
Hmm.
starting Jalen Washington, who's a kid Michigan State wanted very badly, but Jalen Washington's maybe, I don't know, 6'9", 230. He's not really a five. And they don't have a lot. They got another kid MSU recruited. What's the kid's name? Moses, the kid from Chicago. Moses Brown. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Who's center sized ish, but he's not really ready for prime time. They play him a few minutes a
Hmm.
game, and that's about it. So this is not a North Carolina team that we're used to seeing in terms of the interior. They've got some good guard play, but that's a team that I think Michigan State can compete with that team. I think they could beat North Carolina. They'll have to play well to do it, but I think they can beat North Carolina. Whereas Auburn, right now, I don't love their odds. I think Auburn, they're ranked in the top 5, and to me, they belong there at the moment. Again, a
Yeah.
lot can change over months, but right now, that's how I see it. So at least in my house, we're going to be pulling for North Carolina to lose. So MSU is, because it would be, look, it's going to be tough either way, but it would be great, in my opinion, if they can come out of this thing 2-1 with a win over a top 25 opponent, which either of those two teams would be.
Yeah.
Um, that would be okay. That would be a perfectly acceptable outcome in my mind for Maui this year, given the nature of that tournament, the level of competition. You take that and run,
Yeah.
in my view. So that's how I see it.
Well, the nice thing too is that it's a 9:30 game instead of 11 or whatever it is for
They get a
the,
lot of time to
yeah.
rest. Yeah.
So, well, and also it's not an insane hour to watch the game
Right.
for
Exactly.
us on the East Coast. So it'll be a little nicer so you can get plenty of sleep before the Lions play on
That's right.
Thanksgiving Day, which is, maybe the most important game of that the feast week. I guess the last thing we have to do is for the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, the player that cleans the glass best. It's currently tied. You get the first pick. We don't know who they're playing. I don't know that it makes that much of a difference.
It doesn't. It's
So
Jackson Kohler.
you're gonna Kohler. And so it's always who is the number two? I mean, and I probably should have planned and thought about this ahead of time. I, I, I guess I'll just go as Apollo. It seems to make sense. I expect him to bounce back after a pretty disappointing game. He just with foul trouble and such. I
It,
think he'll be better this next game. It's my
he's
hunch. That's how he
he's
tends to
one
be.
he's one where I think with he and Cooper, it really might matter who they're playing.
Yeah,
Because if they're playing North Carolina, I could see Michigan State using more of the small ball lineup than we've seen oftentimes. If it's Auburn, I would expect to see more of the bigs.
yeah.
So
I don't know if
something
you're
to
trying.
watch for.
Maybe you're trying to talk me into picking
I'm
Nick
not.
Sanders,
I'm
but I'm
not.
not going to pick him. Yeah.
I'm just commenting.
Yeah, no, I understand. I totally understand. All right, so we'll be back. I guess probably the next one you'll get will probably drop on Thanksgiving Day. So great listening for pre-Thanksgiving dinner. So hopefully everyone has a great Thanksgiving, is enjoying things. And until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go green.